The Water Entrepreneur is brought to you by ASTERRA, a leader in remote Earth observation technologies, and Imagine H2O, building solutions with the world's best water companies. Support is also provided by Aquarius Spectrum, Simple Lab, Fluid Analytics, Civil Grid, and Orb Monitor. And now, live from beautiful downtown Encinitas, your host, Paul Gagliardo. Welcome and thanks for joining me today. This is episode 51 of the Water Entrepreneur Podcast, and I'm your host, Paul Gagliardo. And today I'm excited to have as my guest my friend James Perry, Executive Vice President of ASTERRA, a leader in remote Earth observation applied technology. Hi, James. Thanks for being a water entrepreneur and appearing on the show today.
Well, thank you for the honor, Paul. And by the way, I have to say congratulations on now over 50 episodes. It's amazing. And having you be the cornerstone of this is really exciting, being someone who's keen bringing disruptive innovation to the market and sharing the benefits of that from your past life. So congratulations.
Great, thanks. I want to thank you and ASTERRA for being a sponsor. As you said, we reached a year milestone of posting episodes. And, when I first started posting once a week, I had a lot of people tell me that, I was crazy. And, so I guess I am because I'm still doing it. It's been a really interesting ride. So last week, I interviewed Ellie Peretz and talked about the business side of ASTERRA. And so this episode is a continuation of the focus on ASTERRA. So we'll talk a little bit about the products and services and offerings that ASTERRA is involved in. So just for a little background, you held positions in business development and marketing at Hewlett-Packard before coming to ASTERRA. Did you find it a challenge to enter a business area, water and satellites that you weren't really familiar with?
That was certainly a consideration when I was looking at joining it. And I was fortunate enough to be over my career with family businesses, other startups, and as well, such a big influential company as Hewlett-Packard. And that really was the entree for me into taking a look at ASTERRA, which was Utilis at the time, and seeing the amazing innovation that comes out of Israel in general, and particularly on the water side of the business as well, too. And if you think about it, it's essentially a desert. You're bringing many people immigrating back into the country, and they need infrastructure to be able to support it. And certainly the consideration around water industry and development was key to use innovation. There just wasn't huge lakes or fresh water available to use for drinking water. So they really needed, out of necessity, to drive that innovation. And for me, the real key when I was looking at making this change, I could have gone off into the sunset with such a great company as Hewlett-Packard, but this challenge was built on some technology that would change our world in ways that even our children's children will be able to manage and achieve. And with all the satellites that are around the globe, 6,000 to 8,000, depending on who you speak with, they're observing, and most of them are not being utilized to their capacity or capabilities. So it was certainly a daunting challenge to figure out how to take something so disruptive and so innovative and make it real in the eyes of the customers. And there was a lot of risk for me in those days, and I'm just glad it's been turning out the way it has.
So was this the first startup that you worked for?
No, there were a few that were actually always around innovation and doing things differently. I mean, still feel like a young man, but I go back to the days when printers wouldn't talk to a computer, and they had different languages, and so you needed to build an ecosystem that could support digital print. And back in the day, it was all analog. If you remember, you'd put it on a mimeograph machine or these other non-digital or analog ways of doing things. And to digitize it took the same kind of effort. It sounds silly if you think about it from a printer perspective, but to be able to have the language to digitize everything from the paper technology needed to change. It needed to accept a different kind of ink, and the digital information needed to transform. And it was really at the cusp of this analog to digital transformation. It sounds like a very 80s or 90s thing, but we still see analog to digital transformation, particularly in the water industry, as it digitizes itself.
Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting analogy. I asked this question to Ellie, and he had kind of an interesting answer. So I want to ask you the same thing. Did you believe intuitively that the company Utilis at the time, ASTERRA now, would be successful? Or did you think it could be successful if things were done correctly?
Well, it's a mix of both, I'd have to say. On one hand, yes, there's always a risk. I mean, amazing startups fail all the time. And as much as you look at the number of startups that come out of Silicon Valley or out of Israel, there's even more that fail. And they fail for usually internal reasons that they don't have the right dynamic. And for us, certainly the amazing work that Loren Guy did to develop these algorithms was unbelievable. We wouldn't be here without that effort. At the same time, it took a lot of business acumen and expertise to break down the ecosystems where we thought this could apply in its many, many applications. But it was going to be important to have a value worthy of adoption. And when you're talking about innovation, it needs to be adopted, and you need to get a foothold in market share for it to be able to grow and fund itself. And while there was risk that this amazing capability would fail, I really didn't feel it was going to fail from a technology perspective as much as a match between the problem or challenge we were trying to solve and our ability to do that.
So, as we discussed, ASTERRA began life as Utilis, and the initial offering was potable water leak detection. So, tell me how you began to, how the product service was developed, and then how you began to market it.
Yeah, it really came from the background on Loren and what he was doing in his master's program, looking for water on Venus and Mars. And we all know that amazing story. Well, the importance for him was he happened to be working for a water utility in Israel, and he knew the challenges on supply and demand, and started experimenting and in his parents' backyard, by the way, using that as a test location where he would flood his parents' backyard and time it right around the time the satellite was going to pass over his parents' backyard. And through trial and error, it was very clear he had something there. It needed continuous and ongoing developments, which we continue to this day, to make it enough of a value to be adopted. But it was intended really for the water market and water authorities and utilities around the world. And that's was our initial start. And that allowed us kind of jumpstart to go after it, to go to these shows and conferences like ACE and AWWA and WEFTech and all of them around the world, to do two things. One is share what we were trying to do, and even more importantly, talk, walk a mile, walk a kilometer in our potential customers' shoes and find out what their pain points were. And I knew intuitively from my background experiences that it would come down to three things. To be frank, it would be, do we make our partners and customers money? Do we save them money? And then there was an added benefit of, can we help them be regulatory compliant? And I think those three key fundamentals were what we were trying to hone down on, particularly for water utilities.
And so, how did you find the marketing process for water utilities? Everybody talks about a long sales cycle, difficulty in finding the right person. The procurement process is complicated and arcane. What was your, process for marketing in this particular business area?
Yeah, there were a few items related to that. First and foremost, from my background, I had been more in a B2B environment mostly. I mean, there was some federal government and state agency business as part of it too. But dealing with these public entities was going to be unique for us. We needed to get to them. And that it seemed the best vehicle for us was by working the abstract route. And as you well know, and been a key component of that for us, this abstract piece was very important because it went from a capability or a possibility or a test of a concept to something that was much more of a vetted case study. And I remember when we started, the circuit, if you will, the rounds and submitting abstracts, and then because of what we claimed we could do in the early days, we garnered a lot of attention from the engineering communities and the public utilities to hear what we had, and those first rounds were really eye-opening because it allowed us to certainly do something different. And at these conferences, it tended to be the traditional markets, if that analog component that I was talking about earlier. And with the potential of what we could do, it really opened a lot of eyes. And there was usually silence in the room, and a lot of questionings coming up on the science afterwards. And that allowed us a lot of Q&A and to garner a lot of voice of customer to get their feedback on what we were attempting to do here. And then we could hone not only the product, but the value proposition. And that was our first key marketing. And that's been still to this day our most important component.
So and I'm going to go back and forth using the terms product, service, and offering, because I know there's some transition at this point in time, but was the product sold as a capital improvement or as an operational service?
Yeah, that was one of the first pieces we needed to look at as a business is the flow of money, the flow of funds. We need to pay the electric bills and to continue to develop the product, as it were. So we needed to understand the value proposition as part of our questions, as part of our voice of the customer. And that allowed us to be able to test. And the very first things that we would ask is this going to be a capital improvement for you, or CapEx on their P&L, or an operational fund? And in the early days, it was really OpEx or operational funding that helped us. And I can remember one of our first projects with American Water, Tennessee, as a matter of fact, that it happened to be a dry year, and that meant that a lot of the golf courses needed to water more, which brought in more revenue, which was an operational bonus, if you will, for the organization. And of course, when you're managing year-to-year budgets, it can be a use it or lose it. So you want to use it, and you want to use it wisely, of course. And we were fortunate enough to deal with an innovation group within American Water Tennessee that was giving us some of their OpEx windfall from a dry year. There are places where we do hit capital improvement areas, but generally speaking, we're an OpEx play for them.
So after that, ASTERRA expanded from that offering into an asset management tool. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about how the one offering kind of evolved into this asset management play.
Yeah, that's the background for that for us is really, it comes to managing a business and a P&L. We always had very good year-over-year growth. Was it enough to warrant funding, Series A and then Series B funding, where the banking or financial industries are looking for very clear return on investments there? And so for us, while we were growing, we knew that there were other things we could do. And It just happened over the course of dealing with very smart people and continue our constant improvement, continually asking for our value with customers and voice of the customer, if you will. It was clear there were other applications that we could play in. Quite frankly, we did the hardest thing first, if you can imagine, to know the chemistry of the moisture type below ground. It's almost mind-boggling that we can do that. And we knew what it took to do that, and being able to test the conductivity of that moisture to adjust the algorithms for other applications. It was very clear that it was going to be an asset management and infrastructure play for us.
And it's interesting because, and then the next thing to expand on the the detection of various kinds of water underground, ASTERRA got into the sewer line exfiltration business, and I'm assuming it just was the same kind of thing. Hopefully the Wren did not flood his parents' backyard with sewage, but to try to understand what was unique about wastewater, and then try to zone in on finding that particular signature in the signal that was reflected back. So it just seemed like it's kind of, again, another natural evolution of the algorithm.
Yeah, and that happens for a lot of startups where you start to see these sort of layers of products and solutions that build out a healthy P&L. It can't just be year-over-year growth rates on one thing. It's usually multiples of other products and solutions. And that was certainly our dynamic on top line and bottom line growth from a P&L perspective. But it did organically evolve, noting that we could define the signature of drinking water below ground via the assumption of the only way it would be there is that it leaked out of a pipe. So there's the next solution that was really two levels for us. One is in the marketplace, our drinking water sides of the utilities would often, in some cases, they would manage both drinking water and wastewater. And the next evolution would be hey, if you could do it on drinking water, can you do it on wastewater? So we worked several projects on that. Pinellas County has been innovative for us. And there was a town in Loren's backyard, so to speak, where they were having wastewater extrusion, leakage from the pipe causing, as you can imagine, issues. And that really brings up much heavier the regulatory compliance. And you think of the 1974 Clean Water Act for the U.S., where there are consent decrees and major fines for not maintaining healthy wastewater systems, which is a real challenge for them. So if we can ensure that their systems are robust with extrusion and intrusion, by the way, then that allows them to demonstrate using the latest innovation for regulatory compliance and overall just proper and health of maintaining that infrastructure.
Do you think one of the big things that is attractive to customers is that the technology is not totally non-intrusive? I mean, you don't even have to go there ever.
That's right.
And it seems like that would make it's in most cases, if somebody wants to pilot test something, you have to bring a piece of equipment to the site, you have to set it up, you have to monitor it, calibrate it, test it, collect the data. There's a lot of interaction. Whereas in the particular technology that you guys are working with, the satellite flies over every couple of weeks. You literally take a picture and send them a map. I mean, it seems like that is one, a benefit, because it doesn't take much from the client's perspective, and two, it's kind of a negative because at least in the beginning, it's it's magic.
Yeah. That's it exactly. The exciting part about it touches so much from what we're doing. And I talked earlier about how Earth observation, remote sensing, satellites, data analytics are going to change the world in ways we can't even imagine. And we've been fortunate enough as a small startup, and now probably just past startup, that we're on the forefront of it. And big names, Lockheed Martin, Airbus, I could go on and on. They're looking to do what we've done, which is capitalize off of data analytics. And the part that was some of the benefit, and I have a data analytics background, but the part that I like the most was you're looking at a sample size. We haven't really talked about the empirical data, the field analysis that we've done. 100,000 leaks found on 140,000 field investigations. That's a massive sample size. We didn't say we believe it'll happen. We went and saw it happen, and that adjusted algorithms. But the part that is so powerful for it, and we're just coming off of COVID, and we get a little bit of a kick back on COVID if we're ever going to get past that. But in the heavy days of COVID, we couldn't even get into the field. We were on emergency only operations, but we could still provide data. We also are another benefit of being a S3 Silver Partner Program member. So we could provide a data layer that would go into these other system tools to do the analytics work for the overall health and robustness for infrastructure. So that data play is really key. Again, from an analog, which is you got to go into the field, to a digital, which is providing data analytics to help maintain these systems to know where their pain points are.
So a few years ago, you rebranded from Utilis to ASTERRA. And I think let me ask you a question. Was part of that rebranding to expand out from the pipe leak detection company or focus into more of a remote Earth observation data analytics company? Was that behind or part of that the rebranding effort?
Yeah, it was really key for us. Paul, we get together at least once a year with some real deep dives around strategically, who are we, where are we going, what are we doing? We don't do it just from a P&L standpoint. We do it from a sustainability play. It really, the entire organization wakes up with that sustainability piece to it. So we sat down as a group and thought about what can we do? We came up with a list of about 62 applications and markets that we could play in. And when we started to test those and other natural evolution, like we talked earlier about, from drinking water to wastewater, we started to look at areas where landslides can be a challenge in water utilities, but also in rail and roads and dams and levees, all that infrastructure piece. It's all aging. And when we started to enter into those, we were initially being told, oh, you're Utilis, you're that leak detection company. So we were being pigeonholed a little bit on that, and we knew we needed to do something a little broader, and it was a little hard to pronounce. Is it Utilis or Utilis? And so we would go back and forth on that, and we contracted with a fine marketing firm here to kind of get our foot on that as well, called Vessel in San Diego. And they really helped us, and we sat down and worked with industry experts, yourselves and others, to really understand what of those 62 would be the best for us. And then that combined with, we needed to start to market to these new marketplaces. We chose ASTERRA as a name, and it's been really wonderful for us. It's very clear. We're a very clear name in the marketplace, and we were concerned about it. We even tagged, technology by Utilis, because we didn't want to lose energy in our baseline business. But it went very quickly. The name's been accepted, and it's opened new doors for us in these new applications.
So let's talk about this next evolution, this whole idea of looking at earthworks, dams and levees. So tell me how the sensing technology can, in this era of climate change, or some places have less water, some places have more water. there seems to be more and more extremes, which those extremes, cause problems, with the existing infrastructure. But maybe you just tell me kind of how that the earthworks type of system offering, how that works. What are you looking for, and what are you trying to achieve?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we did the hardest thing first, which was defining the signature of drinking water, and it started with soil moisture mapping.
Okay.
And as I mentioned earlier, we also did a lot of empirical field work, and we did the same thing on the moisture component. It started with an idea with Network Rail in the UK. They have major issues with slope failure, erosion, landslides that can be devastating, even loss of life on train derailments. Doing the same thing, the same old way you did it on aging infrastructure that was designed and built in the 1800s and 1900s is a real challenge. You just can't rebuild everything. So you need to be able to maintain these systems. So what we did was to develop our soil moisture maps and then do field work. We went into the field and dug holes and took all of these soil back to the lab. We ran some ASTM tests on them. Essentially, you're taking the samples, weighing them, drying them, and weighing them again, and that develops soil moisture maps. And then we did reverse blinds on those as well too. Once we developed the map capability, we gridded it. We went back into the field to once again empirically prove that what we saw was actually there. And now it's being adopted regularly because high degree of slope and high moisture is going to fail. And usually it begins close to the surface, and it's perfectly suited for our technology and capabilities.
Interesting. And again, I don't know if it was one of those 62 market areas, but you guys have recently been talking about identifying lithium deposits, which is very interesting. And now we're going from liquid to a solid, I guess. Right. But so how that was an interesting kind of transition. How'd you even kind of figure out that you could see lithium underground?
Well, certainly it's part of those discussions that we have are what are the challenges in the world, and with all the EV growth and battery development, there's stress in the mining industry to be able to find the materials required to develop and manufacture. So there's a lot of interest, and it comes from businesses. Businesses are in business to make business. So having supply and demand for this is really key. So we started to look at the possibilities of doing that. Again, the power of remote sensing from a satellite. We cover about 1,400 square miles, which is nice to cover vast areas of land. And because particularly with L-band, the return image that we're getting, if you will, we are able to analyze the dielectric properties or the conductivity of these properties. So if we know the material we're looking for and we know the conductivity of it, we can look for it on satellite imagery. And then after doing some work with Atlas and field investigation work in the US, we were able to prove that what we saw was lithium and lithium deposits, which allows us to be able to provide this mapping, and our ability to do minerals and soil chemistry in this manner. It really opens up amazing opportunities for us in the future.
No, that's fascinating. That I guess everything has some dielectric constant, and so the fact that that's what the L-band SAR can look at or see, that really opens up a lot of doors as far as what the technology can do. I'm curious, how many satellites are there now that are focused on the Earth, as opposed to away from the Earth, and then two, have this synthetic aperture radar L-band capability.
Yeah, but overall, and depending on who you talk to on which satellites are active, because there is quite a bit of space junk up there, believe it or not, since doing it since the 50s and 60s. There's between 6,000 and 8,000 satellites, most communication, a lot of Earth observation in terms of photographic imagery, photometric imagery used for military, used to, as you see, tracking hurricanes and storms, which is important, of course, for humankind. In terms of what we have honed down, and this is the powerful part of what we're doing, there are now 4 L-band satellites out there that we work with, and there's more going up every year. There's several going up from the U.S. and India, Canada, the European Space Agency, because they're just starting to see the commercial application for Earth observation, and that's coming into play. Already almost becoming an overused phrase on Earth observation, but really hasn't been tapped into and just starting to be commercialized because of everything it can do, and even goes beyond the satellite component. But anything that's actively sending and receiving an image is going to provide powerful information. Autonomous vehicles, they're sending and receiving information. 5G cell towers, all of that can be used for the good of humankind.
That's interesting. The space junk. You look up at night, it's like, is that a comet, or that,
right?
Is that some Russian satellite that's just happens to be falling to Earth?
That's right. There is a lot of that. And there's going to be more.
There's going to be more, sure.
There's even businesses now looking at going up and repairing or bringing them down in a controlled fashion, as opposed to an uncontrolled fashion.
So, you talked about leaving Hewlett-Packard, moving into this startup. Where are you having fun, in this role, and how do you, maybe give me a little comparison about, working for a large corporation versus working for a startup?
Yeah, it's fun. My experiences between large and small, I love both of them. I'm so proud of my years at Hewlett-Packard, almost 17, dealing with really smart people. And it was always a goal of mine to be able to play in business and have some fun with Stanford and Harvard graduates, and it was a fun component to it. What I like about the smaller and the startup is you just really need to roll up your sleeve. I like to work cross-functionally. I like to work in each functional area, whether it's R&D, operations, marketing, sales, finance, that really are going to be key successful factor for it. And what I really enjoy doing is market making. Taking ideas can seem like crazy, magical ideas, and seeing if there's a home for them. And I need to use all those skills rather than just one component. You have to be able to think outside the box on how this new innovative technology can transform the world. And that certainly is fun. I'm having the most fun in my entire business career doing what I'm doing right now, and it's really changing lives. It's about sustainability. It's about jobs in San Diego, California, and in Israel, and all around in the UK. And we really all wake up with a smile on our face, knowing that every one of the 65 or so employees that we have makes a difference. You make a difference internally within the company, and you can really change the trajectory of humankind with what we're doing. And the only thing that stops me from going 24 hours is I need to sleep once in a while.
Yeah, that's a bummer, but that's, that's
comes
the way
with
it goes.
the
That's
flesh.
the way it goes, right?
Yeah.
So what kind of advice would you give? I usually ask about people who want to get into the water business, but I think for you, it's as much kind of the big data analytics business as much as anything else. I mean, it does have a water environment take to it. But how do you see people, well, maybe a different way to ask the question. Do you find it easy or hard to recruit people into the business that you guys are in?
There's really the needs of the entity, and the entity or the business gets its guidance from the board of directors on down. And it's up for us in a growth mode to bring in the right people at the right time to do the right things. The old 2x2, right thing, wrong thing, right time, wrong time. And you want to stay in the right things at the right time quadrant. And it's so easy, Paul. It's an easy model. It's so easy to do this. And yet so many people fail at it because you're not doing the right things at the right time. And you end up tripping over your own selves more than an idea. If it's a valid idea, you need to get in the field. You need to talk to people, unbias yourself. You need to be very creative and get creative thinkers in there that know how to take innovation in a model that will formally figure out a value proposition, either financially or any other motivations that are appropriate there. If you can do that, adjust and apply, and you're doing something that's never been done before, and you protect yourself with IP or patents, you are going to be successful, unless you make some bad choices and start to do the wrong thing at the wrong time, or the right thing at the wrong time. You create your own failure.
So
I'm sure all the people that are so easy. Are you kidding me? I'm dying over here, but no.
Well, I always, people always tell me, "Oh, the water business is so hard. It's so hard to sell." I'm like,
Right.
Not really.
Right.
I mean, if you understand the customer, it's you can give them what they want,
That
and they'll buy it.
You're absolutely right. It takes some spark plugs within an organization that are creative thinkers looking to do things differently. And if you can build value and data, the analysis, and get external support so that it's real, it's going to get adopted. It has to. Now, there is a time window before someone else figures out how to do it even better, faster, cheaper, smarter kind of things. So if you're able to get ahead of that curve, the water market is a fine, wonderful market. And we've gone from this disruptive innovation, magical component to, quite frankly, being the gorilla in the market, with 50,000 utilities just in the U.S. alone coming to us from all points within the country and around the globe. So it's a wonderful market.
I don't want you to give anything away, but what's next for ASTERRA? What's on the horizon?
Well, there's two components to that from our standpoint. Of course, we keep our base work. Got to keep your eye on the prize for our goals that we set year over year for our investment community shareholders. At the same time, there's these other places on sustainability, and Earthworks is really just getting started, and we need to become that, establish the beachhead right now on that. And so we're going to the mining industry. We're dealing with all the big names that manage mining industry, the earthen dams and levees and rail and roads and property management even. So we're doing that. That's really our next goal. But I would say, hint, this mineral capability really is a potential game changer for us. It's you can do that? And the answer is yes. So now it's really honing down what that value would look like. And you can expect to see a lot more for us. We talk with people about SaaS models and data licenses, and we talk with people about doing other data analytics from other remote sensing as a capability, and you overlay that with partnerships, the ability to cost effectively even be able to build our own satellite is certainly a potential and on the horizon. So we do need to keep focus. We can't get too wild and crazy, but you can look at us for anything related to mergers, acquisitions, building our own satellites, continuing to develop new solutions and products. Sky's really the limit for us.
Great. Well, I wish you all the best of luck. This has been a really fun conversation. As always, I always learn something new when I talk to somebody, and I appreciate the time. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thanks again for inviting us.
Thank you all for listening. If you enjoyed what you heard, make sure to follow us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and rate us 5 stars. Please visit thewaterentrepreneur.org for additional content or to apply to become a future guest. For information on becoming a sponsor, please contact us at thewaterentrepreneur@gmail.com. We hope you tune in again next week.